Alright, so I knew I had to review today's film before I'd even seen it, because if you actually try looking up reviews for this film on YouTube, you won't find a single one. Even trying to find a copy of the movie in the first place is such a difficult task, but there should be at least one person talking about this film, because this has a lot of big names behind the screen and in front of it. It also has 6 Golden Raspberry Award nominations and 1 win, so like Christopher Columbus, I wanted to pioneer something by being the first person to review this film on YouTube.
Ho 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 ho, delightfully devilish, Seymour.
Yes everybody, welcome back to Delightfully Devilish, the show where we discuss films that all at once meet the criteria of being the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm your host Jukebox Harry, and today we are looking at a film based on the magnificent oceanic voyage that sparked the genocide of the Native American people. Christopher Columbus: The Discovery is a 1992 film, which means it came out exactly 500 years after Columbus originally set sail, and like with Deep Impact and Armageddon, it actually came out in the exact same year as another film telling the exact same story, which was Ridley Scott's 1492 The Conquest of Paradise. Oddly enough, another 2 films came out in the same year, one which was an animated film and one which was a British comedy, but none of these 4 films actually succeeded. 1492 The Conquest of Paradise had a lot of beautiful visuals and a stunning soundtrack, but unfortunately it never felt particularly epic. The majority of the film chronicled the internal conflicts of Christopher Columbus trying to get the financing to actually take his voyage in the first place, as well as the power struggles of when he actually built the new land. But a lot more people have heard of this film. When it comes to Christopher Columbus: The Discovery, nobody is talking about this movie. And after seeing it, I can tell you there's 2 reasons why. 1, it's actually a very difficult film to find. I had to search deep and wide on the web to even find a copy. And 2, there's just not much to discuss. This movie sucks, and not in a good bad way, in a boring, lifeless, bereft of any reason to actually exist in the first place kind of way. So like Deep Impact, the fact that I'm reviewing this film is me taking a bullet for you guys. I watched this film so that you don't have to. Christopher Columbus: The Discovery is the final film to pair together father and son producers Alexander and Illya Salkind, the people who actually brought Superman to the screen back in the 1970s. And you can tell that they've actually tried to replicate their success on that film based on certain steps they've taken with this movie. They cast a relatively unknown but handsome actor in the leading role, they brought on Marlon Brando for star power, and they got Mario Puzo, the writer of The Godfather, to come in and pen the screenplay. The only difference is that while Superman was a phenomenal success, there is a reason they haven't made a single film since this movie. The film starts with Christopher Columbus getting accosted by the bad guys from a 1930s pirate film, turning into a sword fight. I didn't know that Columbus was a swashbuckling sword fighter, but it made my first impression of the film be that it was going to be a pirate adventure movie. The Salkinds had previously produced The 3 Musketeers and The 4 Musketeers, so it would be understandable if they took this route again, but this gave me an impression that I was going to be watching a fun swashbuckling adventure film, and maybe that was the reason this movie was criticized. That was dead wrong.
My things. Stick to your profession. Beware the Genoese. And shun the devil.
Wow, they even made him a cheesily optimistic man of good moral values. And I don't know how you say his name, but I think it's George Corafaci. He doesn't look unlike Christopher Reeve, so this film might actually give you the impression that you could end up watching Superman all over again. Do not take that impression. This film is less entertaining than Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Christopher Columbus tells the others his belief that the Earth is round and that a better passage to India can be found by sailing west, but the others aren't as optimistic. He approaches King Ferdinand V, played by Magnum P.I. As much as I hoped this scene would have some traction or be laughably bad, it wasn't. Like the scenes leading up to it, and pretty much every single scene following it in the film, it's just a lot of boring conversations devoid of any characters or believable accents.
In Genoa, of what rank was your father?
The first time there's a feeling of life is when one of the women spills liquid all over Columbus's maps.
Oh!
Cousin Beatrice!
My maps!
Just what emotion was Corafaci actually going for? Based on his line delivery, I don't know that he knows himself. Columbus is brought before Tomas de Torquemada, a prominent figure in the Spanish Inquisition, played by Marlon Brando of all people. And he actually looks quite a bit like the guy.
The function of the Inquisition is to redeem the souls of fallen Christians.
Based on his eye movements, I thought he was literally just reading his material off something on the table, but apparently he was being fed his lines through a radio transmitter that was hidden underneath his costume. So even when he's not actually reading the lines off something else, he still seems like he is. Jesus, that's just terrible from a guy who has won 2 Oscars.
May I know why you doubt my faith?
Well, Columbus, you see, this is a guy who played a prominent role in ensuring that thousands of Jews and Muslims were expelled from Spain. I doubt that he'd have any faith in anybody whose values don't align with the child-molesting Catholic Church. And then the film turns into a cheesy romantic story starring Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Perhaps you'll never return. And I shall be empty inside forever.
Nah, Catherine, you end up spending 20 years being full of Michael Douglas dick.
It may be that I cannot marry you, but I do love you.
Do you? Because based on that tone of voice, I don't think you're capable of feeling any emotions. If you even look closely when these guys kiss, Catherine Zeta-Jones could honestly not have any less passion.
Commission have announced they've reached the final stages of the deliberations.
Oh. Christabel! I haven't told you my news!
I must go. I have to be there.
I'm going to have your child.
You had all the time in the world to tell him that before he rode away.
The ocean sea may not be crossed.
But your grace.
The decision is final.
So that was a fucking lie.
These are from the Apocrypha.
He still looks like he's reading his lines off something. God, how little enthusiasm does Brando actually have for this movie?
He tells me the king sent a strong ship from the Azores on a voyage of...
Wait for it.
discovery.
The film quickly turns into a drama where Columbus is mocked for the sin of believing in something.
Look, it's him, the man who wants to sail without a ship. It's him, the man who wants to sail without a ship.
It's the man who wants to sail without a ship. It's him, the man who wants to sail without a ship.
This is why we should hate kids.
Christabel!
I've seen this raw strength only once before. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now.
He pulls his hand out in such a way as if to force choke her, but relents.
Oh, Lord, why? Why have you forsaken me? Why?
You can do better than that.
God! Why are they testing me like this? Why?
Where's lunch?
And then the scene just ends. Nothing that's happened in this film so far has any real traction to it, but it feels like we were going for dramatization with this scene. The scene should have played out so that we could see the two characters have a moment, but instead the filmmakers just cut.
I bring news from the Queen.
Oh, how convenient.
20,000 maravedis to the man who can make an egg stand upright.
I didn't realize that making an egg stand was such an essential part of the history behind discovering America. He goes on a rant while cutting up a watermelon. We're 40 minutes into the film at this point, and it's all been talk, no voyage. For a film with the word discovery in the title, it has not even attempted to live up to that just yet.
There is no power on this earth saving the Holy Father. Would keep me from making this voyage of discovery.
He said it! He said it!
This is a waste of time.
Yeah, it is. A young goateed Benicio del Toro joins the journey, even though it hasn't actually taken off yet.
What is it between Harana and his son?
He seduced my sister when she was 14. When she was with child, Alvaro repudiated her, calling her a whore. She drowned herself.
Why does this bring a smile to your face? The ship finally starts moving, a grand total of 47 minutes into the film.
I have made Spain one in all things. And yet in the eyes of the Queen, my victory may be obscured by this Genoese foreigner. As God is just, I suspect that he will never return.
He has 2 Oscars. How do you find an actor of this caliber being just this boring in the movie?
Have you ever sailed into the ocean sea, Alvaro?
No, sir. I'm only an adventurer. The sailor is my father.
Alvaro.
You should not trust Benicio del Toro on your team. I remember the crew in The Last Jedi did it, and he ended up being one of the worst fucking parts of that movie.
I am master of arms aboard this ship. Refer to me as anything else, and I'll put you in chains.
Now, you know why I volunteered for this voyage.
Well, I don't.
I wish to redeem myself with my father.
You have quite a task ahead of you.
What the hell does that have to do with discovering America?
Lost enough time already.
Set the topsail!
He will learn the loyalty of men cannot be taken.
You can't just take loyalty. It's not like it's Native American land. A very poorly lit fight breaks out on the boat. I'm not sure who it's between, and I'm not entertained enough to care about discovering the answer.
Master at arms, show the men how we deal with traitors.
In my log, I'm recording less. Every hour further from Spain, more and more of the crew begin to wish they'd never heard the name Cologne.
No, I think it's the Native Americans who wish they never heard that name. Like the rest of the film, the voyage itself is a collection of boring scenes depicting actors attempting to force random conflicts into the script while getting the extremely occasional shot of actual boats at sea. It's amazing to think that this film could not even succeed as a spectacle, especially when the Salkinds had actually pioneered a new level of visual effects with the Superman films. Even when there's a point in Columbus's voyage when they throw a body overboard and a shark comes to collect it, they couldn't even spring the money for it. Apparently there was only enough in the budget for the fin. A little later we get a lightning strike, which briefly turns into a laser rock show before devolving into an excessively blue fight scene of some sort. But I imagine you're only going to have any feelings towards this scene if you suffer from epilepsy. We finally arrive on land, 81 minutes into the film, leaving only 36 minutes left. I had zero faith that the story could come up with anything new at this point. They all start playfully splashing each other with ocean water before the natives approach them.
I think we're gods.
Every white person for the next 600 years. There's also this one shot of a rat for no particular reason. I did some research and apparently this was supposed to hint towards the fact that Christopher Columbus actually brought disease towards the native land. We got one shot of a rat to tell us that. Just that one shot right there.
The very definition of suck.
They discover that one of the natives has a peculiar nose ring.
It's gold.
That's gold, Jerry. Gold!
These Indians are a kind and generous people, and I believe they can all be converted to our Queen's holy faith.
Translation: these people have good values, let's force our beliefs on them and fundamentally change them. They start stealing gold from all the natives and acting like it's a heroic thing, and then Benicio fights with another white guy about which one of them owns this native woman. Benicio kills the white guy and then gets into another Three Musketeers-esque sword fight. We had one of those sword fights at the start of the film, and then one of the sword fights at the end, and neither of them were necessary, and the entire middle section was bereft of any action. Just, what genre were they going for? Like, what was the point of any of this? Benicio loses the fight, but then gets up and stabs his enemy. Then he gets stabbed and runs off to die in the ocean like Harold Holt. Columbus starts sailing back.
Heathens who do not become new Christians shall be slaves.
Jump, Deacon, jump!
Then there's a random shot of a fire. The film never explains what this shot is. It never comes back to it. It's the rat shot all over again. Columbus returns home and kneels to the Queen.
You will rejoice in the knowledge I have delivered Christ's blessings across the ocean sea.
No, you've gone on to deliver 528 years of genocide, disease, and patriarchal oppression against people that aren't the white man. He gets declared admiral, and the final shot of the film is a very obvious attempt to compare Columbus to Jesus. We don't even get a shot of Columbus being reunited with his wife or children. The film just abruptly ends right there. Is Christopher Columbus the Discovery a good film?
Good God in heaven, Nubi, there are just so very many ways for me to say this to you. Never, not in a million years, absolutely not. No way, Jose, no chance, Lance, yet, negatory, nah, and of course my own personal favorite of all time, man falling off of a cliff. No!
Oh, Dr. Cox?
I am not a person with a deep understanding of American history, so any factual inaccuracies in this film are definitely going to get lost on me. What new did I learn from this film? Nothing. This film taught me nothing at all, except for maybe the fact that people need to stop making movies about Christopher Columbus, because every single time they try, it ends up being boring as shit. It's just like the subject of the film Inchon, General Douglas MacArthur, someone who has an interesting story, but someone who every time they try to make a film about him ends up being boring as shit. Despite this film being called Christopher Columbus: The Discovery, the majority of the film isn't even about Columbus discovering America. Most of it is about him struggling to attain the funding to do so. Like, do audiences really care that much about where his money came from? No, we care about the discovery. You know, when we watch The Disaster Artist, we don't want to watch 80 minutes of Tommy Wiseau trying to get together the money to make the room. We want to see him actually make the room. Even though that actually would be pretty funny. I'd love to see a movie of understanding how Tommy Wiseau became rich. Recently, I watched the Academy Award nominated courtroom drama Ghost of Mississippi, which was about Byron Della Beckwith, a white supremacist and Klansman leader who was eventually convicted for murdering civil rights leader Medgar Evers. So like Christopher Columbus: The Discovery, it took a very powerful story and focused on the absolute most boring aspects of it. It was the same thing that happened with Deep Impact when they took a story about astronauts trying to go into space to blow up an asteroid and made it into a bloody teenage love story. The thing that really baffles me about Christopher Columbus: The Discovery is the fact that it fails on every single level. I mean, the story itself is epic. There is a great tale there. How is it possible to actually end up being this boring? Christopher Columbus should never, ever be this boring. Also, this film should at least have some spectacle to it. The Salkinds, they made amazing visual experiences with the first two Superman films. How do you end up making this film look so cheap, lifeless, and dull? Say what you want about 1492, Conquest of Paradise, at least that film is pretty to look at. This movie feels like a bunch of boring conversations that have happened on different sets that never even come close to elevating this film to the epic status that it should be attaining. And you can tell that this film has just been savaged in the editing stage. Obviously the Salkinds have shot a lot of footage for this movie. I wouldn't be surprised if they did what they normally do and shot 2 movies worth of footage. But then they ended up trimming it down to a 2-hour film. There are so many scenes that cut short, so many things that just come and go. And there's that one shot of a rat and that one shot of the island on fire. Nothing ever comes from either of those shots, and the film just ends so abruptly. How much of this film were we originally meant to see? Christopher Columbus The Discovery has no feeling of discovery in it. There is no fantastic voyage to go with it. There are times where it feels like the movie wants to emphasize the heroism of Christopher Columbus, but it doesn't actually have the conviction to follow through on any of this because director John Glenn feels like he is just on autopilot the entire time. As a matter of fact, once America is actually discovered in the story, Christopher Columbus becomes completely irrelevant to the rest of the film and practically disappears. What should be an accomplished feat of filmmaking from producers who made audiences believe that a man could actually fly back in 1978 instead just feels like another forgettable TV movie. And even though they tried to redo the casting decision made on Superman by having an unknown actor play the lead role, it didn't work out this time. George Corofacci certainly does have a certain charm to him, but he doesn't have a script or any direction to go with. And his handsome appeal doesn't compensate for that. He only took the role 3 days before filming after Timothy Dalton dropped out, so he clearly wasn't adequately prepared. But since Christopher Columbus The Discovery is obviously such a catastrophic production, there would be no preparing anyone for this role. Marlon Brando is also an interesting presence in this film, not because of his performance. He phones it in so often that many have called this the absolute worst performance of his career. What's very interesting is the rumor that he took on a role in this film because he suddenly needed to raise a lot of money to pay for the legal defense of his son who murdered someone. He demanded $5 million up front and apparently is one of the few people who actually got paid to be involved in this movie, because producer Alexander Salkind's manipulation of financing and fraud ended up resulting in several lawsuits and a broken relationship with his son. Marlon Brando took $5 million and then phoned it in with this film, but really you can't blame him, because even if he actually gave a good performance, it would have been butchered by the editing. But as a side note, one of the reasons he took on a role in this film was because he made an agreement with the producers that the script be rewritten to actually show the complacency of Christopher Columbus in the genocide of the natives. They did not end up following through on that, so he actually tried to have his name removed from the credits. So everyone sold out on this movie, and it bombed, so there were no profits to show for it. Christopher Columbus The Discovery gets 1 awful ocean adventure out of 10. It's just a downright boring film. It has no idea what story it's telling or how to tell it, and the actors' performances are all as phoned in as the producers' shoddy intentions. And that does it for today's episode of Delightfully Devilish, you guys. If there are any movies you want to see me discuss on this show, please leave them in the comment section below. If you want to see more episodes, please hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, until next time, I have been your host, Jukebox Harry. Peace.